Hello everybody, welcome back to Explain 11. My name is Micah. Today we are revisiting a topic called the cold and dark startup of the Boeing 737-800 Zibo Mod. Many of you have made your requests that I revisit this aircraft and do the full tutorials, breakdowns like I have in the past, including cold and dark startup, FMC and autopilot, and full flight tutorials, all of that. So I plan to do that. I'm going to be doing that today, starting here with the cold and dark startup. I'm going to be using an X-Checklist checklist, X-Checklist being the plugin and the checklist associated with that today as my guide to go through this. I'll do my best to explain things as I go along to hopefully hone your skills here in the Boeing 737. So let's go ahead and get started. No need to fear, guys. Everything I use here will be in the link in the description down below so that you can find it easily. I know that has been a problem in the past. You guys are like, I don't know what checklist you're using. You know, where can I find it, etc. I'll provide links to every single thing in the description down below. So let's start off with getting the checklist up and running here. So it starts off, again, this X-Checklist, I can't remember who it's by right off the bat, but he's done a fantastic job. He has gone through and looked at other streamers such as like Flight Deck to Sim, cast with real pilots, real information and manuals. It's pretty darn good for the checklist itself. Now, I wish I could make this larger so that you could see the checklist better. Unfortunately, that's not an option. So we kind of have to go with where it is for now. Hopefully you guys can follow along, maybe get into the aircraft yourself and follow along with the checklist as well so that you're knowing exactly where you're going and what you're doing. So again, today we are only focusing on the cold and dark startup. The only thing we're going to be touching at the FMC is the IRS aligning, because that's necessary to be able to use some of the systems in the aircraft. So we'll do that with the FMC, but besides that, we're going to skip those sections of the checklist and just focus on getting the aircraft up and running. So let's get going today. First off, that's not on the checklist here. We're going to move over to the EFB, the electronic flight briefing or something like that. I'm pretty sure what it's called. I know it's the EFB. I just can't remember exactly what this is called. It's basically the tablet on the left-hand side. What we're going to do is we're going to bring up ground services, and we are going to connect the GPU. We're going to set the chocks, and then we are going to go back to the home button. That's pretty much it for what we're going to do right off the bat, and that's just to get things in place so that we can actually do the checklist properly. So we're going to go into the overhead panel here, and we're going to start with our electrical panel. The way that this checklist goes is how it should be started up, not necessarily a flow, so to speak. It doesn't start up here with the controls, move down navigation, fuel, over to electrical panel, then up to the heating and the anti-ice, hydraulics, and then over to the air. It doesn't do it like that. It actually flows how it's supposed to start the aircraft. So we're going to start off by turning on the battery and guarding and closing that. So battery and guard and close. All you got to do is flip down this black cover, and it'll go ahead and turn on the battery for you. Dome light, that's an option. So if you're in a dark environment right now, you can go overhead here and select your dome light to dim, off, or bright, whatever you like. I'm going to keep it off because we're in the middle of the day here, so there's no reason to have that on. So next, we're going to check the gear status. And what we're looking for the gear status here, on the right here, you'll see that we have 3 green. It says nose gear, left gear, and right gear. That's telling us that the nose gear, left gear, and right gear are down and in a locked position. That's what we want to see there. And then on the overhead, you're going to see another 3 green. You want to see it green on this one as well. Left gear, right gear, and nose gear. So we are green, 3 green, and plus 3 green. We are good to go on that. It's automatically going to flip us over now to the preliminary flight deck procedure. This is the beginning of our flow here. We are going to start with the fire control panel, which is down here. So all of this is your fire controls. This is also your fire controls. So we're going to zoom in here so you guys can see it a little bit better. And we're going to start off with doing our fault and in-op test switch. Our fault and in-op test switch is right here. So we're going to go into the fault mode. We're going to hold it just for a second. Make sure we have indicators here. It says fault, APU, det inop, and then over to inop, and we're going to get this, this bell ringing, lights popping up. You want to make sure that the fire warning bell is going on here, making sure that's all set up as well. Then we can release that. Get back down to here. Then we're going to start with the fire extinguisher test switches. Over here, going to go to number 1, release, and number 2, release. Fantastic. All right. AC ground power on. So we go overhead panel here. You'll see the ground power switch. We're going to put that into the on position. That's going to switch over our power system from our batteries over to our ground power. Now, why did we do the fire test prior to starting ground power? Well, if we weren't starting ground, if we were going off ground power, technically you didn't have to do the fire switches there. But to keep everything consistent, best to go ahead and do that before you turn on the ground power. And why is that? Well, what if you didn't have ground power? How do you actually start up the aircraft? With your APU. And your APU, by regulation, you have to do a fire test prior to starting your APU. So if you had to use your APU for your startup, which we're not going to cover today, but if you're going to use an APU startup procedure, which is basically the same as GPU, just don't have a GPU, you have to do the fire test beforehand. So I went ahead, we're going to keep that consistent. We're going to do the fire test prior to GPU or APU. All right, continuing on, we're going to go down to our lights here. I'm going to switch our position light from off to steady. That's going to get some steady lights on the outside. Let everybody know we have powered up our aircraft. We have electrical power running through our systems. Now, wheel well light comes on. That's for an external inspection. For example, the first officer could be going through the steps right now while the captain walks around the aircraft, or vice versa, just making sure everything is good to go. You would turn your wing lights on if you have icy conditions to check and see if you have any ice buildup on your exterior. Right now we're in the middle of the day in California, so not really any reason to have our wing lights on for that. So we're good. On the checklist says as needed. And if it was dark right now, we would turn on our logo light. Again, it's not dark right now, so we keep that off. Next, we're going to turn on our electric hydraulic pumps, A and B. So electric 2, electric 1, A and B pumps come on. Perfect, fantastic. All right, so next we're going to go back over to the EFB here. Zoom in here so you can see a little bit better. And we're going to go over using the cursor. You put it on the right side of the tablet. Click the button. It's going to bring this up right here. What we're going to do is select doors. Then we're going to select forward entry and aft service. Forward aft service doors open. So forward service, aft service. And then we're also going to open forward and aft cargo doors. Forward and aft cargo doors. Next, we're going to go back to the home page on the tablet, and we're going to select the fuel we need inside of the aircraft. So fuel weight and balance. We're going to set up our balance, our fuel, how much weight we have on board, including passengers, etc., etc. So I'm going to pull all this from my flight plan that I have created through SimBrief, which I covered previously. That really hasn't changed at all. So if you're curious about that, link will be in the description for that video as well. So you can check that out, exactly how to create a flight plan and read it. So yeah, we're going to start by implementing how much fuel we need to have on board. We are flying from San Francisco to LAX, so San Francisco to Los Angeles. So we're going to put in, remember, round up one, so 5,600 kilograms of fuel. So fuel, 5.6. Boom. Now you'll notice that the fuel required and actual fuel is different. That means we're going to have to actually load in some fuel into our aircraft. No big deal. We'll get that going in just a second. Now, our zero fuel weight today is 62,732. So 62,732. Round that up again. We're looking at 62,800. So we're wanting this to be 62,800. A good place to start off your rounding is trying to figure out exactly what you could do the math if you want to. I usually just go to add 20, and then I'm pretty darn close to whatever I'm supposed to be at, and I can just kind of figure that with my math in my head right off the bat. So 62.8 61.4. So what's that? That adds 1.4 onto it. So 21.4, 62.8. So now we've gotten our payload. We've gotten our fuel. Zero fuel weights correct. Our fuel required is correct. And our tow weight is correct. What we don't have is the actual amount of fuel. So what do we do there? Well, now that we've gotten that, we go back to home, go back to ground services, and we call the fuel truck. The fuel truck is going to come on the outside here and fuel up our aircraft. You can even see a little guy here fueling up our aircraft. All right, so continuing on, we're going to go ahead and start our service crews on the ground. So go ahead and start those. Fantastic. So at this point in time, we would go ahead and set our panel lighting, what we would like that to be. Generally, I set all of my panel lighting to bright. That is just my opinion, my, I don't know what you want to call it, my personal preference, that's what I'm saying. Now, you can set these at different times in your checklist. I generally like to go ahead and set all of them right off the bat. That way it makes things a little easier as you go along. All right, so panel lighting set, emergency exit lights. Move this out of the way here. Right here in the center, we're going to close them and arm them at the same time. We're going to do a test on the cabin attend button, a ground call button test as well. Next, we're going to check our flaps. We're going to move over here to our flaps. Looks like we are in flaps 0, indicated right there. If we were in flaps 1, just so you guys see what the difference is. You can see the difference, flap 2, flap 1, and flap 0. So flap 0, your notch is in there all the way. So we're on flap 0, perfect. And if we look here at our flap indicator, let me zoom back out here so we can see it. We are at 0, so that corresponds with our flap lever. So we're good on our flaps. Flap indicator corresponds to flap lever position. Perfect. Next, we're going to do our takeoff configuration test, left and right horn sound. So we grab our throttles all the way forward, all the way back, and right one all the way forward and all the way back. Perfect. Alrighty. I want to make sure these are all down in the cutoff position. We don't want these up on idle. That means fuel will be flowing. So we're good there. All right, cargo test. So cargo fuel fire test. Down here, the fire panel. This little test button right here. Click and hold. Again, making sure the warning light comes on here. Perfect. Panel and flood lighting. Again, that's in the center console here. You can set this to whatever you want. I usually keep it panel lighting all the way up and flood down, but again, that's personal preference. We are making sure our rudder trim is in 0 and airline trim's in 0. We got 0 and perfect. All right. Next up, it's asking us, hey, is the manual gear extension access door closed? To see that, guys, this is it right here. That's open. That's closed. We want to make sure it's down and closed. Do we have fire extinguisher? We got a fire extinguisher installed, so perfect. Circuit breakers, make sure none are popped. And none are popped by default. I don't even think they are poppable, so no issues there. Perfect. So now it says P6. Now, if you're wondering what does P6 mean, you're looking for any that have the 6 on there, and they're all good anyway. So no circuit breakers are good, none popped first. Perfect. Emergency escape rope in place, first officer. So over here, here's your emergency escape rope. You can't open it up, but that's where it would be. That's good to go. Now we go back overhead panel here. Flight recorder test. So the flight recorder's up here. Whoop. And somehow it's gotten backwards. I hate this. Why does it do this? I don't know. Let's see if I can get it to... Nope, it's still going crazy here. Fantastic. All right, there we go. Whew. Boy, all right, flight record test. Test. And close. Mach airspeed. 1, 2. Stall warning test. 1, 2. Mike selector FLT. That's the third from the left. I'm sorry, third from the right, not left. And EEC lights. Guarded and closed. Passenger oxygen. Guarded and closed. Service interphone is off. Left and right iris modes to nav. Then we're going to go up here to the display selecting. We're going to go heading in status. So status right now is 7 minutes till it is aligned. Cockpit again. First off, captain rope is installed, And circuit breakers, again, those are going to be non-popped anyway. So, moving down to our main panel here, we're going to do our master tests on our flight, all of our lights here, making sure they're all green, or not green, but all are showing, no bulbs are blown or anything like that. Go back to bright. Now we're going to do our AP disconnect. Since our autopilot disconnect little warning lights here, we're going to test 1 and test 2. And we're going to do the same on the first officer side. Test 1, test 2. Perfect. Now we're going to go down to our pilot oxygen mask. And we're going to do a test here. Press to test and reset. So press, test, perfect. Emergency test, hold it. There's your emergency test, release. Main panel background and 80th lighting. Again, I've already set that. We're good on that. Nose wheel steering, that's over here. That should be guarded and closed, will be by default. Clock UTC time. Main panel DU is normal. Lower DU is normal as well. These are your DUs. Weather radar is off. Airport button, so we're going to turn on our airport button here on the captain side. Terrain radar, not okay. This is where I kind of differ from this particular checklist. I'm not so sure about this. It has where you go terrain radar on at this point in time. I keep it off, and that's because I'm thinking if I don't want to be shooting out radio waves into people on the ground. I don't know if that's right or wrong, or if I have a misconception there. I keep it off until I start taxiing or close to the runways. So anyway, minimum reference selector. So on the let's skip over something with the barometric reference. Right now it just happens to be 29.92 barometric pressure, so we're perfect. But if you have to change the barometric pressure, you're going to do that up here. This is your barometric pressure knob. You have baro in inches and baro in HPA. In the United States, we use inches, but if you're over in any other country, you'll use HPA. So barometric pressure in inches. Then you would set that using the smaller knob, and you'll notice on the primary flight display, the barometric pressure changes according to you scrolling up or down on this knob. It is currently 29.92 barometric pressure, so I'll leave it 29.92. Next, we want to select a minimums reference selector. So that's this knob on the left side of this panel to barometric. And then we want to set it the barometric reference as you see here. Maybe you can see a little better. Barometric reference as you see here. We're going to set that to 1,000 feet above the airport elevation. Now, if I bring up my Avi tab here, let's see what San Francisco's airport elevation is. 13 feet. So in order to set 1,000 above, you're going to be 1,013 feet. So we're going to change this to 1,013 feet. Perfect, 1,013 feet. Then we go over to the first officer side here. And we're going to do, again, oxygen test normal, and then oxygen test emergency. We're going to check down here. We're going to make sure that these flap inhibit, gear inhibit, and terrain inhibits are closed and in the normal position here. Then we're going to do a GPWS system test. This is going to give us all of our alerts.
Wind shear, terrain, pull up, obstacle, pull up, airspeed low.
All right, fantastic. Then we're going to go over to our first officer's side. We're going to change the time and date to the UTC time. And on the first officer side, not passenger side, they say turn terrain radar on. I say don't, but again, I don't know exactly what that. Traffic goes to 40. Weather radar is off. Barometric pressure you would set just like you would on the pilot. You would on the co-pilot side here. Minimums, you would do the same thing here. Barometric. And set it. Now you'll notice mine is already the same. That's because I have set in the settings in the EFB to mimic. That way I don't have to do that while I'm flying. So our minimums are good. Barometric pressure is good. We're going to go back to our EFB now. And we're going to stop our service cruise. And we're going to go over to our doors. and we're going to close our service doors. Just our service doors. Don't close the cargo doors. Just the service doors. Then we're going to open our forward entry door. Now, in most cases, that's the only door you're going to open, especially in the United States. However, in some instances, you may open the rear door, but in most cases, you're just going to open the forward entry door. Then we're going to go back to home, and we're going to do a start our flight leg. Packs and cargo, that's if you have ALM. Don't worry about that. You can start your flight leg. And then it goes into programming the FMC. I'm not going to worry about that, so we're going to jump over that. Get back to the pre-flight preparation procedure. The only thing I'm going to do here in the FMC is I'm going to align the IRS position so I can get that to pop up here. All right, so yaw dampener comes on. All of these should be in the null position, and this should be an auto, which it is. Then we're going to go down here, and we're going to make sure a couple things. We're going to make sure that our fuel pumps come on. Center fuel pumps come on only if you have fuel in the center pump that is over 453 kilograms, which right now we do not, but if you did, those would come on. Then we're going to test our crossfeed. We're going to select it. Light's going to come on. Then it's going to illuminate. Then it's going to go dim. Then it's going to bright again, and then go back dim or off. Sorry. All right, now that we've finished the crossfeed test here, we're going to move on to the electrical panel. We're going to select electrical AC switch to APU gen, so we can see it actually, power up here. Fast seat belt is going to go to on. Only if the refueling is complete, which we already know it was very little fuel. To test, check that out. You can see what fuel you have on board here. Or you can go into the fuel tab here and make sure that you have the required amount of fuel here. Window heats left and right coming on. We're going to go down to the main panel here. And we're going to reset our fuel flow back to rate. I jumped the gun there. That's okay. System here, we're going to make sure our oil pressure is above 2,800 PSI and our quantity is over 76%, which it is. Then we're going to go engine display. Overhead panel, not compartment. Overhead panel, we're going to check our cabin pressure. We want to make sure our differential and our altitude are both at 0 here. We don't want this to be, saying a different pressure. That would be a problem, a big problem here. We've checked that. Our altitude indicator should indicate the appropriate altitude that we are currently at, which we are at 13 feet, right? So if we look here, it's basically on 0, which is close to 13. Like I said, make sure you want those to indicate correctly. Cabin climb, that's down here. Make sure that's indicating 0, which it is. Trim air. So we go up here, trim air comes on. Forward and aft, all that cabins need to be set to the auto position, or it depends if you want it cold or hot. I keep it on auto. It's again, if it's like a really cold day, you might want to consider, turning it to the warm side or warmer side or something like that. I just keep it on auto. I don't see any reason why to change that. Left and right air conditioning packs into the auto position. Now we're going to change our flight altitude indicator, which is right here, to our appropriate cruise altitude, which today we're going to be flying at 33,000 feet. So we'll crank this baby up to 33,000. And that's set runway elevation, so runway elevation to nearest 50 feet. Now if we bring up, that's of the destination airport, so if we bring up LEX, see it's 125 feet. We're going to round it to the closest 50. So that was a bit much here. Closest 50, ground up, so 150. Perfect. Pressurization selector mode should be in auto, which it is. At this time, whale light come off. If you have the wing light on, you would bring it into the off position. Anti-collision light should be off. Position light should be in steady. Logo light on only if it's dark. It's not. Ignition in the right position. Both of those should be in auto. Alright, so now we are going to program the course 1 and 2, SID VOR. Again, I'm not going to talk about getting into the FMC and programming it. I'm just talking about with the MCP, which is this right here, the main control panel. We're going to set just the course VORs, or SID VOR courses here. And to do that, we're going to bring up our chart. Wherever you're bringing your charts from, I use AviTab, well, Navigraph through AviTab. So our departure, we are using today the Westla 4, our nav departure. We're going to bring this up, and we're going to look at our VOR course here. And if you're asking, what do you mean VOR course? Well, in the okay, so it says SID VOR course. So in the whatever departure you're using, there's generally going to be a couple different ways that these departures are going to be set up. You're either going to be given a course to a VOR, and then from there you're going to be going somewhere. That there are some departures like that. For example, I'm a VATSIM controller in Portland, and one of the ones that we have there is called Portland 1 departure, and that is a VOR departure. There's a bunch of VORs that you get radar vector to, and so you would set that course into there. Now, if you're running a standard instrument departure, such as this one, the Westla 4, you're going to be going to your first fix. So the heading from the airport to the first fix is 284. So we're going to set that course on both sides, the 284. And now we've set our course to our SID first fix. So we'll go ahead and exit out of that. Next, we'll turn on our captain flight director and our first officer flight director. We'll make sure the disengage bar is up and that the autopilots are all off. We don't want any type of autopilot currently activated. We want to make sure our bank angle is below, or sorry, if we're below 30,000 feet, which I don't know an airport that is above 30,000, we're going to switch it over to 25 degrees. Our departure heading, again, according to charts, we want this heading to be set. Now, it just so happens that since we are taking off runway 28 right, that it's going to coincide with our VOR, our SID, right? So if we do if I bring up just the airport itself, you'll see that the initial heading here, now this is of course without any ATC. A ATC might tell you, climb and turn left heading, 200 or something like that. Then you're going to put that in there. But for now, we're going to put in our runway heading, which is 284. So we'll go ahead and set that up. 284, which is the same as you see our course. What do you know? A lot of times that will happen. So heading 284. Our initial climb clearance. This is going to be dependent. For example, in Portland, it's different. It depends on what kind of controlled airspace you're in, if you're flying virtually or not, if you're flying with VATSIM or not, something like that. If I'm just using AviTab here, what I would be doing here is looking at my SID and looking for my initial climb. Now, you would think 2,000 feet, that's my initial climb, right? It's my first fix out. No, that is not correct. What you're looking for is your maximum climb, your top altitude. As you see, the initial climb here, you climb to Westla at or above 2,000, then left turn direct to Porty. We're looking at a top altitude of 3,000 feet. So we'll set altitude 3,000 and get rid of that chart now. Next, we'll go ahead and set our standby altimeter, which is down here. Make sure that it is the correct altimeter, which 29.92 is correct today. Make sure it's the local QNH. If you need to change it between HPA or IN, you can do so by pushing this button right here. Standby RMI, that's this right down here. If we had an ADF, for example, that we'd want to be wanting to use, we could switch on the ADFs. We're not worrying about that today. We're not using those. We're using VORs. But that is an option. Your backup VOR ADF system here, you want to make sure that you have it selected to the correct one. We're using VORs, so we're going to keep it on the VOR. No ADFs today. Oops, wrong button there. Next, we're going to set our N1 set selector to auto and speed reference selector to auto, which is by default already in. As you see here, auto and auto. If you need to manually set your V1, VR, and VREF speeds, you can do so by using this large selector than the smaller selector, but we're going to keep it on auto today. If the FNC is already programmed, that would show up as valid, and you would actually have some V speeds. Auto brakes RTO. Fuel flow, reset then rate. Initial comm frequencies. We don't have any right now, but we'll just say 128.0 is our initial frequency for departure, or sorry, for ground or whatever. Nav frequencies, active and passive. Again, nothing really to worry about here. I'm just throwing some numbers in here just cause. But if you did actually have some of these, obviously you'd want to put that in there. Mic selectors. So on the mic selectors, you're going to want the captain to have VHF1 on and the first officer to have VHF2. And now we're going to close the flight deck door here. Get rid of those noisy passengers. All right. Then you do your pre-flight briefing. We're not going to worry about doing a pre-flight briefing here. That's not what we're here for. Then we would go ahead and do an announcement here saying, welcome aboard, everybody. Thanks for flying with us today with Delta. And let's see here. Announcement's done. Then we'll go ahead and close our doors. Forward entry closed, and forward and aft cargo doors closed as well. Now we're going to go overhead, and we're going to start our APU. Start our APU. We go from the off to on. Start, hold that down for about 3 to 5 seconds, then release it. And we're going to wait for this to begin. Now, we want the APU to run about 1 minute loadless, so I'll get back to you guys here after the 1 minute time has elapsed. All right, APU is now run for a total of 1 minute loadless. At this point in time, you would do some FMC stuff, and then we would go ahead and turn on our APU bleed. Middle APU generators, so these are these right here, go into the on position. GPU gets disconnected from here, and also in the EFB, disconnect the GPU. At this time, I go ahead and remove the chocks as well, because we're about to get pushed back here. Again, FMC information here, nothing really to do with what we're doing today. Then we go ahead and get our IFR clearance, get all of our information, SID, initial altitude, transponder codes, etc., which may change some of the stuff that we've done, but not really a lot. Anti-collision lights will come to on position. Left and right packs will go into the off position. And then we'll get our push and start request, and we'll go ahead and start our pushback. We're almost done, guys. We are almost done. Let's say we get pushed back right here.
Ground to cockpit, plan acknowledged. Call me through the menu when you are ready.
And we'll go ahead and get the pushback started.
Ground to cockpit, tow is driving up.
All right, start pushback. Now, at this point in time, we're going to wait for the pushback to get here. But in the meantime, I'm going to go walk you guys through this next part. It can get a lot really fast. So, we are going to start our engines. We're going to start with the number 2 engine, and then we'll do the number 1 engine. We'll start with turning the engine start switch to ground. That is this button right, or this switch right here. We'll switch it to ground. Then we'll monitor our N2 pressure right here. We'll monitor this. Once it reaches 25%, then we will turn on or add our fuel from cutoff to idle on number 2. Then we will monitor the EGT right here.
All doors and hatches are closed. Ready to connect.
And make sure the temperature does not go over 500 degrees. If it goes over 500 degrees, then we will immediately cut the fuel back to cutoff as we have a problem with our engine number 2 start. Then we'll wait for engine number 2 to stabilize at 20% of N1. Once it's reached there and it's about 420 degrees of temperature on the EGT, and then of course 65% on the N2, then we will know that the engine number 2 has started successfully and it is stable. Then we'll move on to start engine number 1 in the same manner. So as we wait here for the pushback to get us pushed back here, gonna have to release the parking brake here in a second.
Connected and bypass pin inserted. Release parking brake.
All right, so release the parking brake, like I said.
Starting tow, and you may start engines.
We'll go overhead. Engine number 2 goes to ground. Then we look down here, and we want to make sure you can hear the engine start to wind up here. We're waiting for N2 to reach 25%, and we'll grab this fuel and we'll add it to the system here. $25. Add fuel up to idle here. Fuel cutoff is now up to idle. And we're monitoring our EGT, making sure our EGT does not go over 500 degrees. Perfect. Looks like we're going to have a good start. Waiting for our N1 to reach 20% into, end of the N1. It's kind of close enough. Into about close enough as well. It's not quite the exact numbers, but it is close enough. In EGT is also about 420. We're looking for about numbers here. Now we'll go ahead and go back overhead. Switch our ignition from right to left. Now, why do we do this? Do you have to do this? No, you could stay on right if you wanted to. But alternating, I've been told this by an actual pilot, alternating the engine start from right to left helps keep the alternators evenly used. And that way you don't have one getting wore out a lot sooner than the other. Now we're going to go engine 1 selector to ground. Go ahead and disconnect hand signals there. Waiting for N2 to reach 25%, and then we'll add fuel into that engine as well. Add fuel. Watching EGT. Making sure it doesn't reach over 500. Perfect. Perfect. Now we're going to go overhead here and do a couple more things, and we'll complete this little tutorial here. So our engines, we're going to turn the engine generators 1 and 2 on. APU goes off. Engine start switches go to continuous. The engine start ignition switch goes to both. Probe heats A and B come on. And the left and right packs come to auto. Isolation valve goes to auto. APU bleed comes off. Pushback has already been selected and discontinued. And there you have it. You have successfully started the 737-800 Zibo Mod. I did, a couple things a little bit different than what some other people might do it, but that's okay. In general, that is how you do it. Now, of course, you can customize a little bit as you need to try to get it, how you would like to see the aircraft kind of function for you. But that is, of course, following the checklist, which will be in the description down below. I'll, of course, also have links to the plugins of Better Pushback, which I use for my pushback here, links to the Zibo Mod as well. That way you can go ahead and download all of this for free. Avitab as well. Of course, you won't have Navigraph. I'll put in a link there. It is subscription based, but everything I used in this tutorial here, I will have a link in the description down below for you to follow. I would like to remind you guys that I am supported by you guys out there. You guys financially support me, so if you would like to do so, you can do that over on Patreon, patreon.com/MNFlightClub. You can support me as little as $3 a month and help me continue to make videos such as this one, helping you all out and hopefully encouraging and educating people in the world here. And of course, you can follow me on Twitter, and you can, of course, join the Discord for free and interact with us along the way. Hopefully this has helped you guys. If you have any questions, of course, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, though I do respond better in Discord, but you can leave comments down below and I'll get to them if I can. Thank you again for watching, of course, and until next time, guys, I'll see you guys next time up in the sky.